My dying wife left our daughter a $250,000 trust, only for it to be stolen by the people I trusted most. But my wife had foreseen their betrayal, leaving behind a secret weapon to deliver justice from beyond the grave. The phone call that shattered my world didn't come in the middle of the night. There was no screeching of tires, no somber voice from a hospital. It came on a sunny Tuesday afternoon while I was watching my 17-year-old daughter, Lily, practice for her driving test in the quiet suburban streets of our neighborhood. She was navigating a three-point turn with the kind of intense focus that reminded me so much of her mother, my late wife, Sarah. Sarah had been a planner. She had plans for everything: retirement, vacations, even what we'd do in a zombie apocalypse. It was a running joke between us, but after she was diagnosed with cancer, her planning took on a desperate, heartbreaking urgency. Her biggest concern wasn't for herself, it was for Lily. Before she passed, she made me promise, with tears in her eyes, that I would protect our daughter's future. To make sure of it, she used the entirety of her life insurance payout and savings to set up a trust fund for Lily, $250,000. It was meant for her college education, a down payment on a house, a safety net to launch her into adulthood without the crushing weight of debt. It was Sarah's final gift, her last act of love. When we set up the trust, the lawyers suggested 2 trustees for security. I was one, obviously. For the second, I chose my ex-wife, Jessica. It might sound strange, but at the time, it made sense. Jessica and I had divorced amicably years before I met Sarah. We'd had Lily, and for a long time, we were excellent co-parents. We had our disagreements, but I genuinely believed we both had Lily's best interests at heart. After Sarah's death, Jessica was supportive, helping with Lily when my grief was too heavy to carry alone. I thought naming her as co-trustee was a gesture of unity, a way to show Lily that both her parents were looking out for her. It was the single greatest mistake of my life. The problem started about 2 years ago, when Jessica married Mark. Mark was slick. He had the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes, and a handshake that was always a little too firm. He managed a boutique investment firm, which, as far as I could tell, consisted of a fancy website and a rented mailbox. He was always talking about high-yield opportunities and disrupting the market. He wore a watch that was worth more than my car and spoke about money with a casual arrogance that set my teeth on edge. He immediately took an unhealthy interest in Lily's trust fund. At family dinners, he'd casually ask, "So that $250,000 for Lily, is it just sitting in some low-interest account? That's practically losing money, David. You should let me work my magic with it." I shut him down every time. "It's not for investing, Mark. It's for security. It stays where it is." Jessica would sigh and give me a look, a mixture of apology and frustration. "He's just trying to help, David. He's made a lot of people a lot of money." Over time, her calls started to echo Mark's words. She'd suggest moving the money, just a small portion, into one of his can't-miss ventures. I held firm. It was Sarah's money for Sarah's purpose. My promise to her was ironclad, but the pressure was constant, a slow, steady erosion of our co-parenting relationship. Lily's 18th birthday was a month away, the day the trust would legally become hers. I decided to get the ball rolling, to contact the financial institution and start the process of transferring the funds into an account in her name. It was supposed to be a joyous moment, the fulfillment of Sarah's final wish. That's why I was on the phone, sitting in my parked car, smiling as Lily, perfectly parallel, parked for the first time. I gave my details to the advisor, a pleasant-sounding woman named Carol. "Yes, Mr. Henderson, I have the account right here. The Lily Henderson Trust. You're looking to start the transfer process for her 18th birthday?" "That's the one," I said, my heart swelling with pride. "It's a big day for us." There was a pause, a few clicks of a keyboard on her end. The silence stretched just a little too long. Mr. Henderson," Carol said, her professional tone wavering slightly. I think there might be a misunderstanding about the account." A cold dread coiled in my stomach. A misunderstanding. What do you mean? Well, she hesitated. According to our records, the co-trustee, Ms. Jessica Wallace, initiated a full withdrawal of the funds 6 months ago. The world tilted on its axis. The sun seemed to dim, and the sound of Lily's happy laughter as she got out of the driver's seat sounded like it was coming from 1,000,000 miles away. My hand tightened on the phone, my knuckles turning white. A full withdrawal? That's impossible. That would require my signature. Both trustees have to sign off. Normally, yes, Carol said, her voice now filled with a careful, almost pitying tone. But there's a note on the file. Ms. Wallace presented a document, a power of attorney, signed by you, giving her sole authority to manage the account's assets. The withdrawal was processed on March 14th. $250,000. The account was closed. I couldn't breathe. The air in the car suddenly felt thick and syrupy, impossible to draw into my lungs. Lily was now standing by my window, tapping on the glass with a grin that could power a city. Did you see that? Perfect. Not a single curb tap. Mr. Henderson, you are looking at a licensed driver. My own smile felt like a cheap plastic mask I had glued to my face. I gave her a weak thumbs up and croaked, "1 second, sweetie," before turning away, pressing the phone hard against my ear. A power of attorney? My voice was a hoarse whisper. "Carol, that's impossible. I never signed anything like that. It has to be a forgery." "I'm very sorry, Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice dripping with practiced corporate sympathy. The document was notarized. From our end, all the legal requirements were met. There's nothing we can do. I can email you a copy of the withdrawal form and the power of attorney if you'd like to review them. "Yes," I choked out. "Yes, do that." I hung up the phone just as Lily opened the car door. Her smile faltered as she saw my face. "Dad? What's wrong? You're completely white." I forced the mask back into place. "Nothing, honey. Just a work thing. A headache. You did great. I am so proud of you." The words felt like ash in my mouth. My promise to Sarah, the foundation of Lily's future, had been turned to dust, and I had to pretend everything was fine. The drive home was a blur of forced praise and gut-wrenching terror. As soon as we got inside, I sprinted to my office and opened my laptop. The email from the bank was waiting. There it was, in black and white. A scanned copy of a power of attorney document granting Jessica Wallace full control over the trust, and at the bottom, a clumsy, jagged imitation of my signature. Next to it was a notary stamp from a town 2 hours away that I hadn't visited in a decade. And then the withdrawal slip. A transfer of $250,000 to a corporate account for M-Tech Solutions, LLC. Mark. The rage came then, hot and blinding. I grabbed my keys and stormed out of the house, shouting to Lily that I had to go and deal with that work thing. I drove to Jessica and Mark's house, a renovated 2-story place they'd bought last year, a house that had always seemed a little too extravagant for Mark's supposed business. A brand new BMW was parked in the driveway. Lily's future was parked in their driveway. I didn't knock. I hammered on the door with my fist until a startled Jessica pulled it open. Her eyes widened when she saw the look on my face. "David, what on earth?" "Where is it, Jessica?" I said, my voice dangerously low as I pushed past her into the marble-tiled entryway. "Where is my daughter's money?" Mark appeared from the living room, holding a glass of scotch, a smug look on his face. "David, to what do we owe the pleasure? You seem a little worked up." "Don't play dumb with me, you son of a bitch," I snarled, turning on him. "M-Tech Solutions. You stole it. You stole $250,000 from my daughter." Jessica gasped, putting a hand to her chest. "Stole? David, don't be so dramatic. We didn't steal it. We invested it. Mark's making it grow for her." "Grow?" I laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "I was on the phone with the bank. The account is closed. The money is gone. And this," I held up my phone, showing them the forged document, "is a crime. You forged my signature." Mark sauntered over, peering at the screen. He smirked. "That's a serious accusation. Looks like your signature to me. Maybe you just forgot." happens when you get older." "I didn't forget a damn thing," I seethed. "You came to me again and again, trying to get your greasy hands on that money, and I said no every single time. So you went behind my back and you stole it." "It was a calculated risk," Mark shot back, his slick composure finally cracking. "It was an investment in a new crypto platform. It was going to triple in value. How was I supposed to know the market would tank?" The admission hung in the air, thick and suffocating. It was gone. All of it. Jessica looked like she was going to be sick. "Mark, you told me it was safe. You said it was a sure thing." "Nothing's a sure thing, honey. That's investing," he snapped at her before turning his glare back to me. "Look, it's a temporary downturn. The money will bounce back. You just have to be patient." "Patient?" My voice dropped to a whisper. That was Sarah's money. That was her last promise to our daughter. It was for her college, for her life. And you gambled it away on digital cartoons. "I'm going to the police." Mark took a step closer, his face inches from mine. "You do that," he hissed, "and what will you tell them? That you co-signed a power of attorney, and now you have investors' remorse. It's my word against yours, and Jessica will back me up. It will be a messy, ugly fight that will drag on for years. And in the end, you'll have nothing but lawyers' bills. And you will have dragged Lily through all of it. Is that what you want?" I stood there, defeated. He was right. It would be a nightmare. My word against theirs in a forged, notarized document. My promise to Sarah was broken. My daughter's future was gone. I felt a hollow despair so deep it threatened to swallow me whole. I turned, stumbling out of their house, the sound of their arguing fading behind me. I drove home in a daze, the full weight of my failure crushing me. I had let this happen. I had trusted the wrong person. I had failed Sarah. I walked into my home office, the room Sarah had decorated, and sank into her old chair, burying my face in my hands. How could I ever tell Lily? My eyes fell on the bookshelf, on a row of Sarah's meticulously organized photo albums, and behind them, something I hadn't thought about in years. The small gray door of a wall safe, hidden behind a framed photo of the three of us on Lily's first day of kindergarten. Sarah had insisted on installing it when she got sick. For the important things, she'd said. I thought it was just for her jewelry and our passports. I'd emptied it after she passed, or so I thought. On a whim, driven by some desperate, illogical hope, I walked over, took down the photo, and spun the dial. Our anniversary. Lily's birthday. Nothing. I slumped against the wall, ready to give up. Then, one last combination came to mind. The date of her diagnosis. The day our world changed forever. The lock clicked open. I pulled the heavy steel door, my heart pounding. Inside, there wasn't jewelry or cash. There was just a single thick manila envelope. On the front, in Sarah's elegant, familiar handwriting, were 4 chillingly prescient words, "In case I'm right." My fingers trembled as I reached into the safe and pulled out the envelope. It felt heavy, substantial, filled with more than just a few sheets of paper. In case I'm right. Right about what? My mind raced. Had Sarah suspected Jessica? Had she foreseen this betrayal? It seemed impossible, yet here was this final message, a voice from beyond the grave, and it felt like my only lifeline in an ocean of despair. I sat down at my desk, the envelope lying before me like a sacred text. My hands shook so badly I could barely break the wax seal she had pressed on the back, a small S, from an old letter-writing kit she loved. Inside, I found a stack of documents held together by a binder clip, and on top, a handwritten letter on her favorite lilac-colored stationery. "My dearest David," it began, "if you are reading this, it means I was right to be worried, and for that, I am so, so sorry. I know this must be devastating, and I wish more than anything that I was there to hold your hand through it." Tears blurred my vision as I read her words. It was like she was right there in the room with me, her calm, steady presence, a balm on my shattered nerves. I love Jessica. I do, the letter continued. But I never fully trusted her judgment, especially when it came to money, and I certainly never liked that man, Mark. He has the eyes of a gambler, and a gambler will always bet with someone else's chips. I know you chose Jessica as a co-trustee out of love for Lily to create a united front. I understood why you did it, but it always felt like a weak link in the chain I was trying to build around our daughter. She had seen it. All this time, I had been blind to what Sarah saw so clearly. She hadn't said anything to me then, not wanting to cause a rift in the fragile peace of our co-parenting arrangement, especially when she was so sick. Instead, she had prepared. I hoped this day would never come, she wrote. I hoped this envelope would gather dust in the safe forever, but hope is not a strategy. So I made my own plan, a contingency. The money in that trust, the $250,000, was real, but it was only Plan A. I stopped reading, my heart hammering against my ribs. Plan A? I picked up the stack of documents. The first was a financial statement from a completely different bank, an institution I'd never even heard of. It was for a second trust fund, also in Lily's name. This one had been opened 8 years ago, shortly after Sarah's diagnosis. I scanned the page, my eyes landing on the account summary at the bottom. The current balance wasn't $250,000. It was over double that. Sarah had been secretly building a second hidden nest egg for Lily all those years. She had used a different lawyer, a different bank, and named a different co-trustee. Her own fiercely protective, no-nonsense older brother, my brother-in-law, Robert. My jaw dropped. I flipped through the rest of the papers. There were detailed instructions, legal documents, and copies of emails. But it was the final part of her letter that took my breath away. The first trust was the decoy, David. It was the money I was willing to lose to protect the real inheritance. I prayed Jessica would be the honorable woman you believed her to be. But if she wasn't, if Mark's greed got the better of her, I wanted them to take the bait. I wanted them to think they had won. I wanted them to expose themselves for who they really are. It was an intricate, devastatingly clever plan. She had sacrificed a fortune to lay a trap, knowing it was the only way to truly protect Lily's future from the vipers she saw circling. She had insulated the real inheritance behind a wall of secrecy, with a trustee as loyal and unmovable as a mountain. Now for the hard part, the letter concluded. Mark believes he's safe. He thinks it's your word against his. He's arrogant, he's sloppy, and he has no idea that I've been watching. He needs to pay for what he's done, David, not just for us, but for every other person he has scammed. This isn't just about getting the money back anymore. It's about justice, for Sarah, for Lily. In this envelope, you will find everything you need to give him exactly what he deserves. Follow the instructions, be patient, and when the time is right, tear his world apart. I love you both, forever. S. The anger and despair I'd felt earlier were replaced by a cold, hard resolve. Sarah hadn't just left Lily a safety net, she had left me a roadmap, a weapon. I spent the next 2 weeks following her instructions to the letter. I called Robert, who was horrified but not entirely surprised by the news. He immediately started the process of transferring the real trust into Lily's control for her 18th birthday, which was now just days away. He also put me in touch with a forensic accountant Sarah had consulted years ago. The accountant and I went over the documents Sarah had left. She had been meticulous. It turned out that M-Tech Solutions LLC was nothing more than a shell corporation Mark used to funnel money. Sarah had included a printout of a private investigator's report she had commissioned. The PI had found 2 other investors, a retired couple and a young widow who had lost their life savings to Mark's crypto scam. He had used the exact same playbook on them. He'd convinced them to sign over power of attorney, transferred their funds into his shell company, and then lost it all, claiming it was a market downturn. They had no proof, no recourse. But now I did. The final piece of the puzzle was a small encrypted USB drive tucked into a pocket in the envelope. Sarah's note explained it contained audio recordings. Before she got too sick to see visitors, she had invited Jessica and Mark over for tea. Suspecting his intentions even then, she had placed a voice-activated recorder in the living room. On the recording, Mark's voice was slick and confident as he tried to pitch Sarah on his investment opportunities for Lily's trust, openly discussing how to maximize the liquidity and circumvent the stuffy trustee rules. He all but laid out his entire fraudulent strategy. It was the smoking gun. Lily's 18th birthday arrived. I took her out for a celebratory dinner at her favorite restaurant. I didn't tell her about the money, either the stolen funds or the real inheritance. Tonight was for her. I watched her blow out the candles on her cake, her face glowing with happiness and hope for the future, and my resolve hardened into diamonds. Mark and Jessica thought they had gotten away with it. They thought the storm had passed. They had no idea the hurricane was just now making landfall. The next morning, I put the final phase of Sarah's plan into motion. I made one last desperate-sounding phone call to Jessica. I begged her, pleaded with her to come clean, to work with me to try and salvage something from Mark's mess. I told her I was willing to forget the forgery if they would just cooperate. As Sarah predicted, she refused, her voice cold and distant. "It's done, David. We have to move on. Mark is handling it." That was all I needed to hear. I hung up the phone. I had given her one last chance to do the right thing. Now it was time for the final word. My final word. I drove not to the police station, but to a place Mark would least expect, the annual Angel Investor Gala, a high-profile charity event where Mark schmoozed with the city's wealthiest and most influential people, hunting for his next victim. I knew from Jessica's social media that he was the keynote speaker this year. He would be on a stage, in front of a microphone, with a captive audience of everyone who mattered in his world. I walked into the grand ballroom, my hands steady, the USB drive warm in my pocket. Sarah had left me a weapon, and I was about to detonate it in the heart of his empire. The ballroom was a sea of tuxedos, glittering gowns and the soft clinking of champagne glasses. On stage, under a spotlight, Mark was in his element. He paced back and forth, a wireless microphone headset making him look like some kind of tech guru. He was pontificating about financial synergy and the new digital frontier, his voice dripping with the false confidence that had ruined so many lives. Jessica was sitting at a front-row table, beaming up at him with a look of pure adoration. She had chosen her side. She had made her bed. Now she was going to lie in it. I spotted the AV booth at the back of the room. A young, stressed-looking technician was manning a complex board of lights and sound. I walked over, keeping to the shadows along the wall. I held up a discreetly folded $100 bill and a flash drive. "Hey," I said, my voice calm and even. "The speakers team sent me. They have a last-minute audio file they need played. It's a testimonial. It's meant to go on right after he finishes this segment." I pointed to the USB drive. "Just plug it in and hit play when he pauses for applause." The tech, overwhelmed by the chaos of the event, barely glanced at me. He saw the money, saw my confident demeanor, and nodded, taking the drive. "Got it. Testimonial. After the applause." It was that simple. Mark's own arrogance was his undoing. No one would question a last-minute addition to a presentation about innovation and disruption. I found a spot near the exit, leaning against a marble pillar, and waited. Mark was building to his crescendo. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what MTech Solutions is all about. It's about trust. It's about vision. It's about securing your family's future in a world of uncertainty. The room erupted in polite applause. Mark took a small bow, a self-satisfied smirk plastered on his face. This was it. The tech in the booth hit the play button. But it wasn't a glowing testimonial that filled the ballroom's powerful sound system. It was Sarah's voice, clear and strong from years ago, A slight echo from the recording gave it an ethereal, haunting quality. "So, you're saying you could take the money from Lily's trust?" A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. Mark's smile froze on his face. His head whipped around, searching for the source of the sound. Then his own voice boomed through the speakers, slick and conspiratorial. "Not take, Sarah, leverage. We leverage it. We circumvent the stuffy trustee rules, move it into a more agile portfolio. Your husband, David, he's a bit old-fashioned. He wouldn't have to know the details until the profits are already rolling in. It's practically foolproof." Jessica's face had gone from pride to sheet-white horror. She stared at the stage, her mouth hanging open. The recording continued, playing out Mark's entire scheme to defraud a dying woman of her daughter's inheritance. He talked about shell corporations, about managing risk, which in his own words meant, "The investors take all the risk. I just manage the transactions," and about how easy it would be to get one trustee to sign off if the other was out of the picture. When the recording ended, a profound silence fell over the ballroom. You could have heard a pin drop on the plush carpet. Every eye was on Mark, who stood frozen under the spotlight, his face a mask of disbelief and panic. The men he had been trying to impress were now staring at him with looks of utter contempt. Their fortunes were built on reputation and trust, and he had just gleefully admitted to being a con man and a thief. I pushed myself off the pillar and walked to the front of the room, my phone in my hand, already dialing 911. I made sure to walk right past Jessica's table. I didn't look at her, but I spoke, my voice low and clear, for her alone. "This is what happens when you break a promise to a dying woman. This is Sarah's final word." The aftermath was swift and brutal. The police arrived before Mark could even get off the stage. With the audio recording, the PI's report on his other victims, and the forged power of attorney, the district attorney had an ironclad case. Mark was charged with multiple counts of fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. His boutique firm was revealed to be a complete sham, his assets were frozen, and his world came crashing down in the most public and humiliating way imaginable. He had built his reputation in that room, and in that same room, Sarah had torn it to the ground. Jessica filed for divorce within a week. She tried to call me, leaving tearful, rambling voicemails about how she'd been manipulated, how she hadn't understood what Mark was really doing. I never picked up. I never called back. She had made her choice when she signed that forged document, and again when she stood by him after I confronted her. She had betrayed my trust, Sarah's memory, and our daughter. As far as I was concerned, she no longer existed. A few days later, on a quiet afternoon, I sat Lily down in the living room. I told her everything. I told her about the money Mark had stolen and about the trap her mother had set. Then I handed her the bank statement from the real trust fund. I watched as her eyes scanned the paper, widening as she saw the balance, the tears welling up as she realized the depth of her mother's love and foresight. She did all this for me," Lily whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "She did," I said, my own voice cracking. "Your mom spent her last years making sure that no matter what happened, you would be safe. She made sure you could build any future you wanted." Lily looked up at me, a tear tracing a path down her cheek, but she was smiling. It was a watery, grief-stricken smile, but it was also filled with a strength and a light that was pure Sarah. In that moment, I knew my promise was finally fulfilled. The storm was over. Sarah's legacy was secure, her final gift delivered. The villains of our story were facing their justice, but for us, for Lily and me, it was a new beginning, built on the unshakable foundation of a mother's undying love. And that was a final word no one could ever take away.